Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Passball Show, brought to you by Pielli.com. A lot of different stuff we're going to get into today. And if you go back really off of the weekend in sports, you probably consider it one of the more boring weekends because obviously it's the one weekend that's without football. And if you want to count the Pro Bowl as having anything to do with football, obviously, you're watching a completely different game. But I wanted to start out today by talking about a couple special things we got going on with the show. A couple sponsors I do want to welcome in. St. Aloysius Church of Jackson. They got a church and school down there, so we're going to be promoting a lot of things going on in regards to them. Billy Staples is a well-known baseball author. Wrote Before the Glory. Several different interviews he's conducted in the homes of Major League Baseball players, and centers it around childhood. And he also does a lot of public speaking appearances and does great things for schools. So a couple of special things going on, and obviously we're going to continue to promote them as we move forward here. This time tomorrow, I'll have a completely different setup here at the studio. I'm pretty excited about that. It's going to be a little bit of a facelift. So if you're watching me on Facebook Live, the audio quality and the video quality, I promise you, will be a lot better because a lot of different things that I'm looking to work in to the program. So want to throw the number out there, 732-364-3598. So that's 732-364-3598. Anything on your mind in the world of baseball, sports, and unified America. And one of the things that I'm going to kind of segue into is one of the topics that I'm going to hit up today. And I'm going to kind of talk about some of the silly things that we are doing as American people that I know we could do a better job at. And it's not a matter of taking sides. It's not a matter of getting political. And it's hard to talk about our stance and where we're at as a country without people automatically jumping to the conclusion that you're trying to get political. But the bottom line is that every single one of us, including myself, could do a better job. We could care for each other in a little bit of a better way than we are, because we are all God's children. And God didn't create any of the differences, the man-made differences that we've put out there when we're trying to say that either we're better than each other or when we're kind of using each other's stance and place, whether it's wealth, whether it's what we look like. God didn't put any of this stuff in front of us for us to act this way. We've chosen to do that, and it's a shame, and I will talk about that going forward. But one of the interesting things that I do want to get into today is, the Super Bowl coming up, and I'll tell you, one of the last things that I'm going to do is sit here and give you 5 days of Super Bowl previews. I mean, if you're really looking for that, obviously the media is out there on Media Row over at the Super Bowl in Minneapolis, and you know what? Good for them. But at some point, they're going to have to try to find something else to talk about other than the Super Bowl. Yes, they could get people that are around there involved and ask questions, but how much are you really going to preview a matchup between two football teams that by the time the Super Bowl starts, we will have known about them and probably everything you could possibly know about them for 2 weeks? I'm interested in the Patriots and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick for this reason. If you look at the history of professional sports, you could talk about the most dominant, whether it's an individual player in an individual sport or an individual player in a team sport. And I think this is a fascinating conversation to bring up because obviously based off of what your sport is, what sport you follow, you may be a little biased in how you feel about it. But I think we could talk about individual sports, such as golf. Jack Nicklaus, 18 majors. We thought for a while that Tiger Woods was on his way to shattering that record. And you know what? He still may have a chance. He's playing competitive golf now. He just made it through 4 rounds of a major tournament. Golfing the 72 holes. It's a big step in his, effort to come back and play at this year's Masters. But, you look at what Jack Nicklaus did over his long career to win 18 majors, to be in that tournament with that many players each time and manage to not only compete, not only finish in a top 10 and a top 5, but win the entire thing. And we've seen that recently with Roger Federer winning Wimbledon, his 20th major championship. And from an individual sports perspective, it's something that is just unbelievable by itself. Now, how do we compare that to that of team sports? Because obviously an individual that's competing for a championship, it's all up to them. If they have a bad day, there's nobody there to pick them up. If they're not able to get the job done, listen, they're the only person that gets blamed for it because it's an individual sport. We've seen several great players, a Ted Williams in baseball, a Ty Cobb in baseball. You can name some of the greatest professional athletes to ever play that never had a chance to win a championship. Is it because they weren't good enough? If you ask them, in some cases they may want to blame it on what they were surrounded with, some of their teammates. Maybe they weren't part of the greatest team. So it's different when you're talking about an individual that wins a lot in a team sport, because there's so many other factors. And, sometimes it's not all their fault. Sometimes it is. Tom Brady, the 2 Super Bowls against the Giants, he was unable to do what other teams have been unable to do over the last couple postseasons. The Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl last year. The Jacksonville Jaguars in the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship game this year. They were unable to close the Patriots and Tom Brady out. Well, Tom Brady ran into those same problems against the New York Giants. As we're getting a little bit of sound effects going on today. Kind of a special thing going on here. Always trying to throw you some different types of sounds. Whether it's, the jeering or cheering from the crowd or, random automobile sounds. But, the Giants, who ended up holding off Brady and winning those 2 Super Bowls against him, is that a knock against Brady, the champion? So as he's about to, or has a very good chance this Sunday, to win his 6th Super Bowl, which is something that, no other quarterback has ever done. And obviously it has shown an 18-year dominance that the New England Patriots have had, which is really, it's almost hard to duplicate, because really the only constants that the Patriots have had are Belichick and Brady. Everything else has been kind of a turnover. You could talk about the system and how the systems work, but obviously the accolades need to go to the coach and to the quarterback. So my question that I'm throwing out there is, if Brady wins his 6th Super Bowl this Sunday, where does he rank when it comes to the greatest team sport athletes and winningest athletes? Because we could talk about numbers. When you want to throw numbers out there, you say, hey, Tom Brady, even with 6 Super Bowls, can't hang with Bill Russell. Bill Russell won 11 NBA championships in 13 years. It's something that, even if the NBA went to a point where all the greatest players or all the best players played on the same team, the Golden State Warriors plus LeBron couldn't win 11 NBA championships in 13 years. And that's what Bill Russell did. If you go back to the days of Joe DiMaggio won 10 World Series championships from 1936 to 1951. So you're talking about a 15-year career, 10 times he was on a team that won the World Series. So where would Brady rank in regards to these other team sport athletes? Because I do think there is a little bit of a divide. It's hard to compare Tom Brady and the New England Patriots to Roger Federer. What Roger Federer has done on his own, and he's done it very quietly. You go back, I remember back to the days of the 80s and the 90s, when we were thinking about guys like, Yvonne Lendl and Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi. Those were players that had a little more flair to them, a little more, attention was driven to what they were doing. Roger Federer, what he has done on the tennis circuit is, dominate a sport that, by the way, probably is getting more attention for its women's tennis than it is for male tennis. And it's the guy that quietly has won 20 major championships. Now, in the United States, we may not look at tennis and say it's that big of a deal. You know, how many people are listening or watching right now can say that they have watched too many major tennis championships, even the finals? But I think you do, and this is why I'm a little split with this, you do have to talk about Roger Federer in regards to one of the greatest champions that professional sports has ever had. Is it better? Is what he's done more of a big deal or more accomplished than what Bill Russell did? Bill Russell was the ultimate leader. Not only did he win 11 championships in the NBA in 13 years, but he was also the head coach of the last 2. You know, a lot of people throw out Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, 6 straight years that he played, or, 6 straight years that he was ready after his little hiatus in the baseball, won an NBA championship with the Chicago Bulls. And, not to take anything away from what Michael Jordan did. He was one of the greatest athletes that professional sports has ever seen. So it's impossible to talk about Michael Jordan and even slightly knock him with the thought of a possible backlash. But when we're talking about the greatest champions in individual or team sports, I don't know if I could put Michael Jordan in the same category as a Bill Russell, as a Joe DiMaggio, as a Jack Nicklaus, or Roger Federer. And you may want to say we're talking about, different times. I mean, you can look at what the Golden State Warriors are doing right now. Yes, they've won 2 NBA championships in 3 years. They look poised to win another one. If they're able to keep the core that they have together, they should be the odds-on favorite for the better part of the next 5 years or so. Well, in the end, they're going to be judged by how many championships they win. It's a little early to say that. You know what? They went for back-to-back and they lost to the Cavaliers. They're going to try to do it again this year, win 3 out of 4, and it'll be a start. So, I mean, I guess you could say, hey, the Golden State Warriors may be on their way. Especially if you talk about the rest of the NBA being so watered down, and it seems year after year, the quality of competition in the NBA gets worse and worse. So I think the Golden State Warriors have a chance. But when we're talking about the best of the best, I'm not talking about winning 6 championships. I'm not talking about Kobe Bryant winning 5. And all of a sudden the big discussion that's out, who's better, Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan? I'm talking about the greatest champion in the history of professional sports. Do you have to get to the double-digit level in regards to what I just mentioned? Joe D, Bill Russell, Jack Nicklaus, Roger Federer. And you look at the individual sports, and I do think the individual star or the individual athlete has the best form based off of the way things are to succeed. You could go out there and dominate. You could be just that much better than the rest of the competition. I mean, seriously, look at the period where Tiger Woods dominated the sport of golf. There were very few other golfers that belonged on the same course as him, let alone could compete with his ability to win championship after championship. And not only the majors. He was winning or finishing top 5 or being right on the borderline of winning every single tournament that he entered. So if you're looking at a golfer, who is the next big golfer? I'll tell you, there's big shoes to fill to even be mentioned in the same breath of what Tiger Woods did over the best of his career. And listen, he's taken a step back. His body has failed him. He's getting older. That's what happens. You look at professional sports, how many athletes are able to play well into their 40s? Not very many. What Tom Brady's having a chance to do, who knows if this is going to be the last chance that he has to win another Super Bowl. I know he puts up the numbers, and the Patriots are on a run every year, and it looks like they're the favorite to come out of the AFC. It's almost a foregone conclusion. Pretty similar to the Warriors in NBA basketball. You know, they're going to the finals. Who are they going to play? Except Tom Brady and the Patriots have been that team for the better part of the last 18 years. So I look at those four, and I say those are the best athletes in regards to not only winning championships based off the quantity, but when you talk about best champions in the sport, I think it's very hard to bring up other names without first mentioning DiMaggio with 10 World Series, Bill Russell with 11 NBA championships, Jack Nicklaus with 18 majors, Roger Federer just won his 20th major tennis championship. And I don't think we give these accomplishments enough respect, because with the technology that we got, everything right at our tips of our phone, all we got to do is just click. The information is there. It's always about what's next. But sometimes you got to take a step back and marvel into what some of the best ever did. And we make sports about numbers all the time. You heard me talking about the Hall of Fame in baseball. How you got some of the most accomplished baseball players in regards to statistics in the history of the game that aren't in its Hall of Fame. But you could talk about individual accomplishments in a team sport. I understand there's a little bit of a rift there, because you don't want any individual, no matter how great they are, to put themselves in front of the team. So that's why I kind of circle back and I talk about what Jordan did. How Michael Jordan's presence on the court literally made everybody around him better. And that's a fact. So you can talk about how he made a comeback with the Washington Wizards. He didn't have very much left. You can talk about the 2 years he spent trying to play professional baseball. But there was certainly enough truth to the fact that when he was on the court, once he got into his groove, once he led the Bulls to those 3 championships, the first 3, it was a demand almost that he had on the other players around him. And he brought out the best in him. And I compare it to Billy Martin. You know, as the longtime manager of the Yankees, and obviously with the Twins, the Tigers, the Rangers, and the Athletics as well. There was a commanding of respect that he had. And he would never go out and say it. He would never say, I demand this out of you. But I tell you, he would find a way to get the very best out of every single player that played on his team. Did some players dislike him? Sure. Did some players not respond to him? Sure. But what was the common denominator? They would not spend very much time playing for Billy Martin. And Billy ended up wearing out his welcome. First with the Twins, then with the Tigers, then with the Rangers, then with the Yankees a couple times, then with the Athletics, then with the Yankees 3 more times. So as much as you could say that Billy Martin was a winner and he got the best out of the teams that he managed, he didn't have a very long shelf life in regards to being able to sustain that. So that's what makes what Bill Belichick in New England, what he has done, makes it even more impressive. I mean, he could have whatever his mantra is in that locker room in regards to what he is asking out of the players or demanding out of the players. And whatever that formula is, it works. And you want to say it's all about the coach and the quarterback. Well, the coach and the quarterback have provided some leadership that has sustained 18 years. So I think the argument, which I think is pretty fascinating, you can make a case that every single one of these individual accomplishments are just as special, or in some cases even more special, given the backdrop and everything else that's going on. I mean, think about transactions in the NFL from year to year. I mean, you could go back as recent as the 90s, when there wasn't as many player transactions, and teams like the Dallas Cowboys had a chance to play its best players, keep them on their roster year after year after year, and still be okay in regards to the salary cap. Well, player salaries went up, and the ability to keep all your top players and stay under the salary cap made it very difficult for all NFL teams, not just the Cowboys. So for the New England Patriots, who gets more credit, Belichick or Brady? Yeah, that's another discussion. But to say that what the Patriots have done over the last 18 years is nothing short of outstanding, you're either biased against the Patriots or you're just not paying attention. You know, you need to have some breaks go your way. And over the course of time, the Patriots have gotten those breaks. They've still had to earn every one of their opportunities. And as they get ready to play and a chance to win their 6th Super Bowl in 8 years, in their 10th Super Bowl overall, you're not going to see many runs like this in the National Football League going forward. And I'd say that same point is to be made about the other major sports. The only one that still has an opportunity to have that juggernaut or that dynasty team is the NBA. And that's the way the NBA is set up. You know, the top players, rather than wanting to compete and beat each other, they want to join the same team and just be buddy-buddy with everybody. You think Michael Jordan and Larry Bird would ever want to be teammates? Of course not. But that's the way the NBA is set up now. And I tell you, you look at the other major sports, and baseball, remember, I've been talking to you about the luxury tax threshold acting as a de facto salary cap. And it is. There's no question about it. It operates exactly like a salary cap. Because now that salaries have gone up so much and the luxury tax threshold has not increased at the same rate, you're watching teams spend very cautiously. And as we're sitting here on the 29th day of January, with over 100 free agents still out there in Major League Baseball, we want to call collusion. No, the real issue is the fact that baseball and its owners and a commissioner finally found a way to curtail salaries in Major League Baseball. Something that had progressively gone up for the better part of the past 40 years. And baseball, with their last collective bargaining agreement, snuck it in there, put this luxury tax threshold, didn't raise it by that much, and set the penalties for teams that go over the luxury tax to a point where they can't sustain their business by being over it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in a row. And I don't know if it was a strategy that was put together that finally came to this point, but I'll tell you what, baseball owners, they won. They finally found a way to halt salaries in Major League Baseball. And I'm very curious to see what happens next off season when you look at the likes of Bryce Harper and Manny Machado and maybe Clayton Kershaw, Charlie Blackmon, who's a guy that really gets no credit. He's one of the top players in all of baseball. when all these guys become free agents, are they going to run into the same problems as J.D. Martinez and Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas and Jake Arrieta and Yu Darvish are running into right now? Because I'll tell you, as we enter the month of February, and you're looking at the likes of these star players that are still unsigned, you don't think half the league would love to have one of these players on their team? Of course they would. But now you're getting to a point where you're seeing that teams are fearful of adding that big contract and getting over that 197 luxury tax threshold. And if they do that, they have to worry about it next year, which is going to impact their ability to take a shot at the core free agents that are out there. But it's just very interesting to look at. Baseball salaries are going down, but to get to the point that I started out by talking about, when we're talking about individual champions in team sports or individual sports, you're going to really need to have that player that is so good in baseball. But he's got to be surrounded by something. Mike Trout is the best player in Major League Baseball, and there's not even a question about it. There's other good players. There's other top players. There's other stars. But there's nobody that belongs on the same playing field in regards to being the best player in baseball than Mike Trout. How many World Series championships has Mike Trout won? And obviously, Mike Trout has a ton of fans. A lot of people in the media talk about how great Mike Trout is all the time. And what's their defense? It's a team sport. He hasn't been on the best teams. Put him on a team like the Yankees or the Dodgers. But then you look at the Angels, who are not necessarily a small market club by any stretch of the imagination. I think it starts at the top with Artie Moreno, the owner. Him and his general managers and the organization as a whole has let Mike Trout down. Mike Trout is like a Roger Federer. Except Mike Trout is not getting the attention he deserves in a sport that a bunch of people watch. Roger Federer's issue was nobody was watching while he's going out in there winning 20 majors, which nobody else has done in the history of professional tennis. Mike Trout, year after year, continues to be the best player in baseball, but is on a team that really, you can't really go back to any one of Mike Trout's seasons and say that the Angels, as they're constructed, really had a shot at winning a World Series. Get to the playoffs? Yes. And you know what? If you get to the playoffs, you have a chance, right? Odds makers will give you a chance to win a World Series if you get to the postseason. But the Angels, as they set themselves up this year, re-signed Justin Upton. They got Zach Cozart to play third base. Of course, they signed Shohei Ohtani. He's going to hopefully be a top pitcher for them. Also play the field, maybe a little bit, or DH. They upgraded in a number of different ways. This Angels team maybe has a chance to compete with the likes of the Houston Astros, who just won the World Series. But I tell you, they're in a battle for second or third place in their own division. You think the Texas Rangers should be a little bit better. The Seattle Mariners, they've disappointed over the last couple of years, despite some higher expectations. But they should be a little bit better. So in spite of the Angels having a very busy offseason, there's nothing that really separates them. Their pitching staff has never really stood out. They've had a starting rotation full of pretty much 3 and 4 starters. Guys that you could trust to probably give you 30 starts. Pitch a couple good games. But where's that legitimate ace? I think they're hoping Ohtani becomes that. But I tell you, you look at Mike Trout, and he's arguably one of the best athletes in all professional sports. Every year he goes out there and plays, 140 games. He's guaranteed to be in the top 3 in the MVP voting. And he's done things that very seldom have we seen in a sport that goes back 150 years. As we hit the halfway point here on the Pass Ball Show. Once again, John Pielli with you. A reminder, you want to be part of the program, please call in. Let me know whatever's on your mind. 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. So, Trout, is he just not a champion? Like, how do you view that? We could talk about Bill Russell, once again, winning 11 NBA championships in 13 years. Joe DiMaggio winning 10 World Series, getting to 11 World Series in 15 years. And oh, by the way, a couple of those other seasons, he didn't even play because he was in the military in World War II. But what about, Mike Trout? Or what about, like I mentioned earlier, a Ted Williams or a Ty Cobb? And I look at Ted Williams and Ty Cobb, and I think of those two players are two of the 3 best position players to ever play in baseball history. The only other person I put in the same context is Babe Ruth. And then, to me, it's a little bit of a drop-off after that. Sure, is there a discussion? Absolutely. You could talk about Barry Bonds, Rogers Hornsby, Stan Musial, Henry Aaron, Willie Mays, Oscar Charleston. A lot of really, really good players. Jimmy Fox. You talk about some players that absolutely dominated during the time that they played that probably don't get the credit they deserve. But is there anything held against the likes of a Cobb or a Williams because they never won? Will the same be held against Mike Trout if he doesn't win? The guy may dominate the sport for the next 10 years, but if he doesn't win a World Series championship or a series of them, is he looked down upon because of that? Remember, he's playing a team sport. And you know what? He's done it elegantly. He's done it professionally. There's nothing about Mike Trout that would make you think that he puts himself before his team. Because that's the first thing we usually knock out when we talk about a big star and them never getting a chance to win or never winning a championship. Are they all about them or are they about the team? Well, the impression you get is Mike Trout is not about himself whatsoever. He essentially is the face of Major League Baseball, but the quietest face that Major League Baseball has had in a very long time. So he goes out there and maybe over the course of the next 10 years gets to be part of a couple World Series championship teams. Maybe he doesn't. But what makes Mike Trout different than, let's say, a Tom Brady or a Michael Jordan? Of course, you throw the obvious in there and you say the others won. The others dominated. There was proof that the others made players around them better. But also, we're talking about Brady and Jordan who played different sports. So, is it a possibility that it's more difficult in baseball to bring out the best in players around you? Think about the cohesion that has to exist in the NBA, playing basketball. Even if you're playing a pickup game in the street, in the back of the Votech. You need to have some cohesion between a couple players that are on the same team. One player needs to have a sense of where the other is going. If he's either going to pass the ball or take a shot or take a run to the basket. I believe that there's strong leadership that exists. And that's why, a Russell or a Jordan or a Kobe Bryant, they had the success that they had because they were able to put more of an imprint on their entire team. Number one, you're talking about 5 players being at the court at one time. So you have somebody that's leading those five and leading at a level that nobody else in the NBA is doing. Then I could see how those other players get better because of the presence or the emergence of one star. Football, it's a little more difficult. Think about it. Tom Brady, your average football game is lucky if he's on the field half the game. The other half, there's 11 different guys that aren't Tom Brady on the field. So, yes, he could control the offense. He could control the locker room. But there's nothing he could do physically to help the defense if they're not stopping the other team. If they're giving up big play after big play, there's no way Tom Brady, the leader, as great of a leader as you may think he is, can physically halt or influence the defense to do any better. So I look at baseball and I see it in the same category in regards to football. You're talking about 9 men on the field in baseball as opposed to 11 in football. The pitcher who's only pitching once every 5th game or once every 6th game, depending on what team they pitch for. And when they pitch, they're only pitching, 5, 6 innings now? That's for another discussion. But you're talking about the impact of one player to be able to make all the players around them better. Football and baseball is a lot more about the team, and it's a lot less about a single individual. And that's why you look at what Bill Russell did, what Jordan did, what Joe DiMaggio did. By winning all that time, or all those championships, Super Bowls and World Series, in Tom Brady's case, you're going to look back at them and say, hey, they did something that doesn't happen very often. And that's why I look as a sports fan and I say, I don't care how I feel about the New England Patriots. Man, I got to be honest, I'm indifferent to them. I don't root for a team in the AFC East. I'm not a New York Giants fan who thinks of, the 2 Super Bowls where the Giants beat the Patriots. I got no dog in the fight. But I tell you, one of the things I appreciate when individuals can dominate a team game. I wasn't a Chicago Bulls fan, but I tell you, I pulled for Michael Jordan. What Bill Russell did with those Celtics teams was one of the greatest accomplishments in the history of professional sports. It never gets talked about or very seldom gets spoken about. Not only did the guy win 11 NBA championships in 13 years with the Celtics, but he was also the head coach for the last 2 seasons while he was still playing. That's a legend. Who's better, Jordan or Kobe or LeBron? Why isn't Bill Russell in that same discussion? 11 NBA championships in 13 years. Moving on. Once again, John Pielli, happy to be with you. 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. Get you up here. Anything that's on your mind in the world of baseball, sports, and unifying America. And another thing that I did want to get into, obviously, the big announcement today that the Cleveland Indians, the team decides that they're going to drop the logo of Chief Wahoo. And, this has been a discussion for a long time in regards to sports. You could talk about the Braves, you could talk about the Redskins, and we live in this politically correct society. And I get it. I do. I don't want anybody to feel like they are being slurred. And I can handle an insult no matter how you want to throw it at me. You could call me whatever you want. I'm not going to let it bother me. That being said, not everybody can let it roll off their back like I can. And maybe that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Maybe I could challenge people to start hurling some insults at me and see if I'm right about what I'm saying. But the bottom line is that we do take things personally. And some people are more sensitive than others. So when it comes down to something that is hurtful or could be considered a form of hate in a discussion, we tend to not want to use it, or we tend to want to stay away from anything that could cause some controversy. And I'm okay with that part of it. What I do want to hear from is I want to hear from Native Americans. Because what I'm hearing, the majority of the time, is something that does bother me. It's when people describe something as being hurtful and insulting and offensive to somebody else, and they get offended for that person. And if you understand what I'm saying, it's like, me hearing something that could be offensive to somebody else, and me asking a person if they find that offensive, and they say that they don't. If they say that, does it make it still offensive? And I'm not saying that all slurs or all, forms of racism are treated the same. Obviously, there are plenty of them, that we've shown proof of what they mean and how hurtful and hateful they can be. And I'm open-minded. Trust me. If Chief Wahoo, picture of an Indian which came in to represent the Cleveland Indians in 1947 as their official mascot, is offensive, I don't need to hear an explanation of why. But I'd like to hear from Native Americans. I'd like to hear from, people that have, Native American backgrounds in their history. I think, the Indians made a good move here. I mean, you've seen it happen through most college sports. You had a St. John's Red Storm instead of the Redmen. The Syracuse Orange instead of the Orangemen. So there's been a precedent that's been set. But looking back at this, I want to make sure, and I hope people start to look in the mirror when it comes to it. There's different, forms of being insulted or offended. But the answer to say, hey, somebody could be offended is different than saying somebody is offended. And as we move on in a program, we're going to try to get, a guest on that's going to be able to talk about that. And I want to find out once and for all, these Indian names or Native American names in professional sports, look at all the backlash against the Washington Redskins. Are there actual people that have a Native American background in their heritage that are insulted by this? Or is this just a problem with an overly offended society that's going to find every possible reason to be offended? And I hope you're taking a little bit out of what I'm trying to say here. There's hate There's racism. And when it comes to that, that should and will not be tolerated. But you're looking at names that have existed for sports teams, in the case with the Indians, for 70 years. And I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it should always be accepted. But I don't necessarily see a big celebration in regards to people with Native American backgrounds saying that Chief Wahoo is no longer going to be a mascot or represent the Cleveland Indians. Is this because somebody could be offended? Or is this because a group of people were offended? I think that has to be looked at. Once again, John Pielli here, 732-364-3598. That's 732-364-3598. As we move forward here, I do want to continue the discussion. It's, if you think about the greatest individual accomplishments in regards to championships in professional sports, which one would you say is the most powerful? I mean, a lot of people throw, Michael Jordan's 6 with the Chicago Bulls out there. People could say, hey, Tom Brady wins his 6th Super Bowl. Where does that rank? Does that make him the best champion or the most accomplished champion? And then you'll look at individual sports like tennis and golf. Roger Federer just won his 20th major championship. I understand tennis doesn't get the same attention that, team sports get. And the media doesn't give tennis anywhere near as much credit as it may want. But still, 20 major championships is an outstanding feat. Jack Nicklaus, 18 majors in professional golf. Bill Russell, 11 NBA championships. Joe DiMaggio, 10 World Series. And I think those are things that we have to look at. We have to compare, or we should compare, those type of accomplishments against each other. And I guess the point that I've been trying to make, how do you talk about a Jordan or talk about a Brady or throw, let's say, a LeBron James in the mix and say, hey, he's won, 3 NBA championships. Where does he rank in regards to the best champion? To me, you can't bring anybody else's name into it without mentioning the 4 that I just mentioned. Jack Nicklaus, Roger Federer, Bill Russell, Joe DiMaggio. They all won double digits worth of championships or more. You want to talk about, let's say, a John Wooden, what he did at UCLA, winning all those championships. Now it's harder to judge somebody as a coach, because when you're a coach, you don't always have the best players. And how do you keep the best players motivated year after year? I think it is harder now. You're going to see another Major League Baseball player win 10 World Series. I tell you, look at a couple guys that won 3 over the last several years. The guys with the Giants, whether it's a Mad Bum or Buster Posey. David Ortiz with the Red Sox. And they're probably not getting the accolades they deserve for winning 3. Imagine somebody going out there being part of 10 World Series championship teams. That's incredible. And oh yeah, by the way, after winning your third straight, decide, yeah, I don't like the way I'm playing. I'm just going to retire. Joe DiMaggio, if he wanted to, would have been welcomed with open arms to be with the New York Yankees in 1952. Who, by the way, they didn't need Joe DiMaggio to win a World Series again in 52 and 53. So Joe D won 10. I'm sure he wasn't going to do anything that was going to keep the Yankees from winning the World Series the next 2 years like they did. So he could have had 12. But yet we're talking about Tom Brady. And listen, 6 Super Bowls in this era, the way the game has changed, salary cap, everything that I mentioned before, it's an outstanding accomplishment. There's no way I'll ever take that away from him. I'm rooting for it. As an objective sports fan, with no vesting interest one way or the other, I'd like to see Tom Brady win another Super Bowl. Because stuff like that fascinates me. Stuff like that doesn't happen very much in one's lifetime. And you can handle it 2 different ways. Listen, if you have a vesting interest, if you're a Jets fan or you're a Bills fan or you're a Miami Dolphins fan, sure, root against the Patriots all you want. That's in your blood. And I'm sure if the roles were reversed and this was a team that was competing in the same division with a team that I root for, I'd probably feel the same way. And I know a lot of people say, hey, I'm tired of the Patriots. I want to see somebody else, which is fine. And you know what? That's what would make the 2 weeks between the championship games and the Super Bowl a little more fun. Because you get to learn a little bit more about some players and some teams that you don't see in the Super Bowl a lot of times. But I'll tell you, if you're not rooting against the Patriots for whatever reason, like I said, if you're a fan of the New York Jets, I get it. But if not, I'll tell you, it'd be something pretty special to see. Let's see if Tom Brady can go out there and win 6 Super Bowl. Only the Pittsburgh Steelers have won 6 Super Bowls. No quarterback outside of Tom Brady has won 5. It's a hell of an accomplishment. And odds are he's going to want to add to it and play another year. Stuff like that fascinates me. That's what makes sports great. When somebody has a chance to accomplish in this modern era in 2018 something that'll be remembered for generations upon generations. Joe DiMaggio left us in 1999. He stopped playing in 1951. The 10 World Series championships that Joe DiMaggio won as a player isn't even the number one thing that he's remembered for. Of course, he's remembered for the hitting streak in 1941, 56 games. One short of a huge endorsement deal with Heinz. Their insignia and their logo of number 57. But that's what I'm going to close the show with today. Jordan, Brady, great careers, great winners. Brady wins this 6th Super Bowl. I think him and Jordan are a pretty good comparison. But don't for 1 second, in spite of the greatness of each one of these 2 individuals, don't for 1 second say that they belong in the same breath as Joe DiMaggio, Bill Russell, Jack Nicklaus, and Roger Federer. Be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Got a couple guests planned out for the week. Longtime baseball writer Tracy Ringlesby out in Denver will be joining the program. Also, we're going to have former NFL kicker Steve Christie will be coming on one of the days during the week. I do have a couple other guests that I have lined up. We'll kind of leave it as a surprise. You can check out johnpielli.com, where I got some of my feature shows, my YouTube channel. Just search my name, John Pielli. Every one of my videos are put up there. Good thing I got about that is not only do I have a descriptive title that kind of gives you a little bit of a clue what I'm talking about before you tune in, but I take time in putting together a transcript that explains in detail every single topic that I cover. And you'll find that, yes, my passion is baseball. Secondary would be sports. But most importantly, I love people. And I think that we are lucky enough in the country that we live in to have so much going for us and so much more going for us than we're willing to acknowledge and sometimes appreciate. I mean, think of third world countries. We think of communist countries. We think of people that's everyday lives are so much different than what ours are. And we take it for granted. We really do. And, we look at each other. Whether you look different than me, or you think that I look different from you. And we all want to judge each other as if it's a big competition. We've all been given the greatest blessing. And it's the fact that we live in a free country where people do have the right to do whatever it is that they want, just about. And obviously, in some cases, they're overdoing it. But there aren't as many times, and there aren't as many regions in this world where we can be blessed with the same freedom that we have in this country. And I've said it, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, and I'll say it till my last day on this earth. We all should be in this together. We should stop making the biggest deal about our differences and what makes me look different than you and you look different than me. None of us are better than each other. And we have a chance to accomplish so much more in this country than ever before. And all it takes is a little bit of teamwork, a little bit of selflessness, a little bit of acknowledging the fact that none of us are perfect. And the fact that one of us can make a mistake. And it shouldn't be the ultimate indictment on the one person. Yes, there's different categories. There's different levels of mistakes. I'm not talking about a heinous crime. That should not be tolerated. But, the fact that somebody can say something. Think about what they just said and what it means and what it meant and how it could hurt somebody. And then have the ability to go out there, acknowledge their wrong, and apologize. And not only that, but have their apology be accepted. So when we go out there and we want to judge anybody in the mainstream, anybody with a name to them that's on the news because they made a mistake. Like I said, there's different levels of mistakes. Some are worse than others. But if somebody makes a mistake by saying something I'm one that doesn't believe that every single thing that somebody says they mean or they think about. And think about it, social media. How many times does somebody send out a tweet and then realize, wow, it didn't come out the way that I wanted to send it, and delete it? Doesn't make that person bad. Doesn't make that person evil. Makes them human. And when you're on the offensive, when you jump out there and put that person, out there and call them out for whatever you want to based off of what their tweet or what they said means, just remember they're human just like you. And think about how you would react that one moment where it was you. People have, plenty of examples of being in that environment around their group of close friends. And maybe you say something that you didn't really mean, but you're just trying to get your friends to laugh. Maybe you make fun of a close friend of yours. You don't mean it. You just want to make your friends laugh. And then that close friend walks by and overhears you. I think there's a lot that we could do. I'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern. Periscope, Facebook Live, and on demand on YouTube. God bless you. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.
Rock over London, rock on Chicago, Barcelona, the San Francisco tree.